Question: If Kaaba as the house of Allah was built by Ibrahim, then before Prophet Muhammad, why it is not mentioned in any holy book like books of Jews or Christian? Why any following prophets after Ibrahim mentioned Kaaba? Anything solid and verified evidence available?
Answer: The Islamic belief that Prophet Ibrahim built the Kaaba is not mentioned in the Torah or the Bible. This is a point of divergence between the Abrahamic religions. There are a few different perspectives on why this is the case, why it's not mentioned in Jewish and Christian holy books. The absence of the Kaaba in Jewish and Christian texts is a topic of theological and scholarly debate. Divergent narratives. The foundational narratives of Judaism and Christianity do not include the story of Ibrahim's journey to Mecca or his construction of the Kaaba with his son Ishmael. Their religious focus is on the covenant with Isaac and the lineage that leads to the Israelites and Jesus Christ. The Kaaba is a central part of Islamic history, but it does not play a role in the core narratives of the other two faiths. Theological focus. Jewish and Christian texts center on Jerusalem as the holy city and the site of the temple built by King Solomon on the foundation of the sacred rock where Abraham was prepared to sacrifice Isaac. The focus is on the land of Israel and the events that unfolded there, not on the Arabian Peninsula. Argument of corruption. Muslim view. Some Muslim scholars suggest that the original scriptures of the Torah and Gospel were altered over time, and that any mention of the Kaaba or the pilgrimage to Mecca was removed. This is a theological explanation rooted in the belief that the Quran is the final, uncorrupted revelation of God's Word. No archaeological or historical evidence. From a historical and archaeological perspective, there is no direct, verifiable evidence outside of Islamic tradition that links the Kaaba to Abraham. The earliest non-Muslim sources mentioning the Kaaba date to the 7th century CE, well after the time of Abraham. These sources often describe it as a pre-Islamic pagan site. Pre-Islamic references and evidence. While there's no solid evidence from non-Islamic sources proving the Kaaba's link to Abraham, there are a few points of interest. Pagan origins. Historical and archaeological scholarship generally points to the Kaaba being a pre-Islamic pagan shrine. Pre-Islamic Arabs used it as a place of worship for various deities, with idols placed inside. The Kaaba itself and the Black Stone may be related to ancient Arab pagan practices involving the worship of stones. Biblical allusions. Some Muslim commentators and scholars have put forward interpretations of certain biblical passages as veiled, references to Mecca or the Kaaba. For example, some have suggested that the Valley of Baca, mentioned in Psalm 84:6, refers to Mecca, also known as Baca. This interpretation is not accepted by mainstream Jewish or Christian scholarship, which sees Baca as a place name or a metaphor for weeping. The Khuzestan Chronicle, a 7th century Christian chronicle known as the Khuzestan Chronicle, mentions that Abraham lived a simple life in the desert and built the first temple on the site of the Kaaba. However, this is not widely considered a reliable historical source, as it may have been influenced by early Muslim accounts and reflects the ideas of the time rather than independent historical evidence.
Question: Why Ishmael was ignored by Jews? Maybe his teachings and thoughts were eliminated from Jews' books?
Answer: In Jewish culture, Ishmael's role isn't the same as his half-brother, Isaac. He doesn't hold the spotlight as the folksy ancestor's creator, as seen in the first 5 books of the Torah, specifically in Genesis. The covenant and lineage. In the Jewish tradition, there's this story about God promising Abraham that his kids would make a huge country called Israel. It even says so in Isaac, Abraham's son and Sarah's generation. The narrative recounts Sarah's struggle to have children, ultimately giving Hagar to Abraham to produce Ishmael, who became a threat to Isaac's lineage. Abraham requested Hagar's departure, and God promised Isaac's descendants would thrive while the covenant passed through Isaac. Ishmael's place in Jewish tradition. Ishmael, who is not genetically linked to the Jewish people, is mentioned in the Torah and later rabbinic literature. The Torah records that Ishmael and Isaac came together to bury their father Abraham. Rabbinic tradition mentions Ishmael apologizing and reconciling with Isaac, showcasing a more optimistic view of his character than usual. Ishmael's teachings were not removed from Jewish texts. They focused on Isaac's descendants, including Jacob and the 12 tribes, as God's promises were fulfilled through them, emphasizing the unique covenant with Isaac.
Question: where Hagar and Ishmael did go after Sarah asked Ibrahim to send away?
Answer: after being sent away by Abraham, Hagar and Ishmael went into the wilderness. The biblical account states they wandered in the desert of Beersheba and later settled in the wilderness of Paran. Islamic tradition indicates that Abraham left Hagar and Ishmael in Mecca's desolate valley, providing them with food. As their water ran out, Hagar sought water twice daily, while Ishmael cried out. An angel appeared, revealing a spring and establishing Zamzam as a settlement where they lived. Both traditions state that Hagar and Ishmael were saved in the desert, and that Ishmael became the ancestor of a great nation. The biblical account notes that God was with Ishmael as he grew up, and his mother found him a wife from Egypt.
Question: if it is believed then, while leaving Hagar and Ishmael, Ibrahim maybe built something to stay in because in the wilderness no one can survive under the open sky or without any resources?
Answer: what if Ibrahim left Hagar and Ishmael to explore the wilderness? Might he need a shelter or sustenance, since survival is challenging in such conditions? The Islamic tradition, Islamic belief suggests that Abraham did not provide a shelter for them, leaving them in the desolate Mecca with only dates and water. Hagar's search for water leads to the discovery of the Zamzam well, attracting a tribe. Together, they survive and live among Ishmael. As a young man, Ishmael witnesses Abraham build the Kaaba in accordance with God's command, playing a central role in the Islamic narrative. The Judeo-Christian tradition, the biblical account in Genesis, does not mention Hagar and Ishmael constructing a structure or well. When sent away, they receive bread and water, eventually wandering in the wilderness. With provisions dwindling, Hagar places Ishmael under a bush, observing his death. An angel reveals a well of water, promising Ishmael's future as a great nation. Abraham does not build a structure or well for them at that time.
Question: it seems both stories aim apart from different places. So if it is believed Muslims' point of view, then their claim does not bypass the Jews' point of view?
Answer: it's noteworthy that the Quran and Bible share key characters, including Abraham, Hagar, Ishmael, and Sarah, and both depict Abraham sending them into the wilderness for divine intervention. However, their foundations differ significantly in their theological interpretations. The Islamic claim disregards the Jewish perspective due to its distinct theological narrative. Key divergences. The fundamental difference lies in the purpose and destination of Ishmael's descendants. In Judaism, Isaac establishes the covenant and prophetic line through his expulsion of Ishmael, necessary for preserving the lineage's purity. Ishmael is not cursed and is promised to become a great nation, separate from the land and people promises. In Islam, Ishmael is the founding ancestor of the Arab people and a prophet. The Abraham-Hagar-Ishmael story illustrates the core myth for the Hajj pilgrimage and Mecca's sanctity, placing Ishmael at the center of Prophet Muhammad's lineage. The Abrahamic covenant. Both religions share the belief in the Abrahamic covenant, but they interpret how it was fulfilled differently. Jews and Christians see the covenant fulfilled through the lineage of Isaac, leading to the establishment of the Jewish people, and, in the Christian view, to Jesus Christ. Muslims believe the covenant is fulfilled through Ishmael and Isaac, with Isaac's line receiving Israel's prophetic succession and Muhammad completing the message while not negating the Jewish narrative. This perspective highlights a different path for the covenant's ultimate purpose. The narratives are not competing to explain the origins of the Israelites and Arabs, but offer distinct theological explanations for their prophetic traditions.
Question: before Islam, from where the locals Arabs learned to perform the Hajj, and Islam almost copied whatever it was ritual like rounding around the Kaaba?
Answer: you have raised a critical point about the historical relationship between the pre-Islamic pilgrimage and the Islamic Hajj. It is well documented by historians and religious scholars that many of the rituals of the Hajj existed in some form among the Arabs before Islam. However, the key distinction, from the Islamic point of view, is not that the rituals were copied, but that they were repurposed and purified. Pre-Islamic pilgrimage to the Kaaba. Before Islam, the Kaaba in Mecca was a sacred temple for pagan Arabs, a hub for trade, and a major pilgrimage site with similarities to today's rituals, though in a polytheistic context. Circumambulation, the tawaf. Arabs would circle the Kaaba, which housed around 360 idols, including those representing gods and goddesses like Hubal, Allat, Al-Uzza, and Manat. Some reports state that the tawaf was often performed naked, as they believed they should approach the gods in the same state they were born. Running between Safa and Marwa. This ritual was also practiced, but it was associated with two idols, Isaf and Naila, which were placed on the two hills. Pilgrims would touch or kiss them as a sign of veneration. Talbiyah. The call or chant of the pilgrims was a key part of the ritual. While they would utter, Labbaik Allahumma labbaik, here I am, O God, here I am, they would add a line acknowledging that their tribal gods were partners of God. No one is your partner except one who is permitted by you. You are his master and the master of what he possesses. The Islamic transformation. When Prophet Muhammad conquered Mecca in 630 CE, he and his followers cleansed the Kaaba of its idols and rededicated it to the worship of the one God, Allah, according to the original monotheistic teachings of Abraham. Islam's view is that the pagan Arabs had corrupted the original monotheistic rites established by Abraham and Ishmael. The Kaaba was, in this view, originally a house of worship to one God, and Muhammad was simply restoring it to its original purpose. The key changes were monotheism. The most significant change was the removal of all idols. The entire